But in this regard, I'm very happy also to introduce the agenda of today's BarCamp. We will have, what we have prepared is two keynotes, Maren Kröger and Amir Atfar. I will later explain in detail the profiles of these two colleagues. And then here in the couch sessions, we have a very broad and diverse portfolio, which I would think. So we have the Lebanon case where youth rebuild their schools again for applying work-based learning and strengthening social cohesion. We have the Ukraine here, which I learned that companies continue to train despite the invasion. Gaza, students continue in improvised learning facilities, and Ethiopia, Senegal, linking training to real market demand despite the crisis, and also cross-border activities for refugees. That's what we have today, and of course we will finish again and wrap up in the last 30 minutes. Yeah, we have seen even in the most challenging situations, whether it's in Ukraine, Gaza, Ethiopia, Senegal, or Lebanon, people continue to learn, to teach, and to create opportunities. That's really remarkable. And the question arises really for all of us to get together. So what can dualized realistically deliver in this fragile context, and what needs to be adapted, and always taking into consideration being aware of the human realities behind these concepts. And with this, we have our keynote here today, who can really give us a broader picture on this application of TVET and dual-VET in this difficult context. We have Maren Kröger here with us to help us to move from theory to really reality, and to really look into real experiences from the field, very concrete in urgent context. Maren is connected from Hamburg. I guess it's not a crisis area. Working for the GFA consulting group, specialized in TVET, employment promotion, gender transformative approaches, and really working in fragile and crisis context. 15 years of work experience, and before joining GFA, she was with the UNHCR, where she led the organization's global portfolio on higher education and TVET for refugees. So I'm really happy that Maren is here to really give us the big picture. And following Maren's input, we will have then Amir Atfar, who is the TVET officer at UNHCR, and he will give us a glimpse on the institutional setup that had been put in place, the task force on refugees, that it's a joint collaboration from the ILO, UNHCR, GIZ, and FinChurch, to complement what Maren is saying. But with this, I would like then to hand over to you, Maren, and to give us the idea on how you perceive the realistic application of dual-VET in crisis and fragile context.
Thank you very much, Christine, for the warm welcome, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about that topic, which is really, really close to my heart. No, as Christina has said, I actually had been 8 years with UNHCR, 10 years with the UN, but just on a minor note, I'm now with the GFA Consulting Group, and we are implementing a lot of projects in this context. I will present some of them. The one that I'm presenting are all GIZ projects. So we are, as GFA, as a consulting group, we are applying to offers, and then we are implementing sometimes work packages or components of GIZ projects in this regard. I'm just trying to move my slide. One moment. Okay. So before I go into the project details, I just want to set the scene also, as Christine shared it. Yeah, we have fragile context almost everywhere. I think it's a topic that is arising, although the numbers of forcibly displaced people globally has declined for the first time since years. But I think we agree that this is, I mean, there are reasons behind this trend, but I think in general, we will see a rise in this regard. No, we also know that over 60% of the world poor will live in fragile states by 2023. And there are severe funding gaps right now with the withdrawal of the US government and humanitarian funding, but also other major donors, including Germany, are stepping out of humanitarian funding and also reorganizing their development funding. So there is I would say, a sense of crisis on every level. But nevertheless, we can see that the learning and the programs are still continuing despite all the different circumstances. Now, we have heard already from Ukraine, trainings are continuing. We see in Gaza that the learning is either be done virtually or in learning tents. And we know from our projects, for example, in Burkina Faso, where I manage a project, that we do not have access to the communities because of security reasons, but the trainings are still taking place. And also in Kurdistan, in Iraq, GIZ is still implementing a project, although because of the war between Iran and Israel, people had to be evacuated and we had to switch into remote management. So I think that's the big picture. Let's now move a bit into the while classic dual VET is under threat in fragile context. I think this is really important to understand, because the key question today is what can we realistically deliver? And I think when we stick to the vision of implementing, I would say, classical traditional dual VET programs in fragile contexts, we will fail. This is not possible. But I think what we can learn today and from all the different experience, that a lot of things are possible. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to adapt and to do it maybe in a different way, to still continue to offer the best learning experience as possible. But nevertheless, there are conditions that are making it more challenges. No? So for example, one thing that we can observe, depending on the context, of course, that the private sector collapse. No business get destroyed. Also, business owner might move to a more secure area. And also there's not a big, I would say, motivation to invest or even to host apprenticeships in a fragile context. No? So business are surviving, are in a survival modus, and hosting an apprenticeship means investment in the first place. And you need security and stability to do so. The training structure, I think we see everything. So it could be there's no structure at all. There hasn't been any structure before. It could be that the structure is destroyed or not functioning, not maintained. Or it could also be that there is maybe a good training structure, but it doesn't meet the private sector needs at all. There's no collaboration between the training structure and the needs of the private sector. But then when it happens that there is displacement happening, so actually people either moving within a country as IDPs or crossing borders as refugee, that people are on the move, they might not stay for a long time in one place. It's also not, I would say, there's no security that they could stay maybe for a 2 or 3 year program. They might continue to move. And also because they have moved, their documentation is missing. No, they might not have, for example, their records of their high school degree. It might be that they have their records, but it's not recognized by the country where they are in. Or it could be that they had been in training, but the training hasn't been certified. So I mean, there's a lot of questions around documentation, which is linked to displacement. Then with regard to funding misalignment, I think that's also important, because we are now speaking about a context that is in the nexus between humanitarian and development cooperation, and humanitarian funding is mostly only for a year, and a year is already long. It could be even shorter. And I think for classical VET projects, we need a long-term commitment over 1, 2, 3 years. And that needs development cooperation, that needs long-term planning, and we can't see that in a fragile context. The question around certification and recognition, I already spoke about it with regard to displacement. It's really a key question when you talk about displaced learner. And I think what we can also see, another point that I haven't mentioned, is that there could be a lot of skill programs, but they are not certified. They are not recognized by the national system. So people receive training, but it's actually not a pathway back into the existing structure. And then, of course, in general, there's a lot of questions around security. For example, what I just mentioned for Burkina Faso, where we just can't access the communities, and we have to work through local partners. And it could also be that people have to be evacuated completely, if you have seen it now in Iraq, or we have seen it in Mali. So there are threats that we have to deal with. But I mean, the good point is we can actually do it. And so when I have analyzed the project that we are doing, I talk about we as GFA, that are 3 GIZ projects that we are implementing or we have implemented. I would describe them on a continuum. So on the left hand, we have my Burkina project, PDK, which is really, it's working in 5 communities, mostly with women, IDPs and host community women. And we really do very short trainings. It's really a 1-week training on soap production or on a very sort of simple way of enhancing agricultural products. We do a 1-week training, we deliver the starter kits, and then the women increase their income by producing these things. So it's very, very short term. There's no certification, but there is a starter kit, and we see an increase in income. So all the women that we have trained, and it had been almost 500, have increased their income activities. And this is, I think, that's really the extreme side on short-term skills. But it's possible, it increases income, and it's possible even in communities where we don't have access. So for example, the starter kits, we have to organize through local authorities that they are distributed via the convoys that still go once a month to these communities. In the middle, we have PESOP, our Cameroon project that is closed. It was in the West region with IDPs. And here we had a more long-term approach. It was also short-term skill training, but we had collaborated with existing TVET centers, so national TVET centers in Bafoussam, who had offered those trainings. And the training were more long-term. So for example, in hairdressing, 6 months, or in a more advanced agricultural production. So, and delivered by trainers from existing national TVET structures with an opportunity to continue these trainings in those structures. And I think one really nice addition, a side impact in this project was that our team jointly with GIZ was able to advocate for land titles for IDPs, so that then the IDPs who were living in the communities could use the skills and actually increase their agricultural production on their own land, which was at 0 cost, but a great advocacy achievement. And then on the right side, we have the Iraq EPSI project in Kurdistan, where we strengthen TVET centers, teacher capacity, we organize internships, but there's a work package GIZ choose to do a pilot in dual approaches. So we have been asked to try to pilot a learning setting where most of the learning is happening in the private sector. And we are at the moment doing it right now, and you will hear from my colleague Ismail on how that goes in reality. But just to sum up, I think that's a bit the continuum of different projects that we can see. And on the left side, really very short-term skill training, and then on the right side, piloting dual approaches. And now we listen to my colleague Ismail. It's a recording. He's an expert who's working for our partner BBW in Kurdistan, implementing this work package 4 in the GIZ EPSI project. So I'm now switching to the recording. One moment, sorry. No. We'll hear from my colleague Ismail, who is sharing his experience from our EPSI project, GIZ EPSI project that we are implementing jointly with BBW in Erbil. Over to you, Ismail.
Hello, my name is Ismail Bakha. I work for BB International as a local expert on the EPSI project in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. I'm based in Erbil, and I have been working in vocational training in Iraq for over 15 years. When I visited the vocational training center across Kurdistan, I saw the real picture. Some centers have only 4 or 5 trainers, and the same person has delivered several different types of training. Electrician 1 week, mechanic the next. The rooms are the same, the equipment is old, and trainers are not properly paid by the government. This is the starting point for our work. Not a criticism, just the reality we have to work with. What we are doing with EPSI is something that has never been done here before. The Kurdistan TVET strategy mentioned dual training, but nobody implemented it. Now we are piloting it in 3 cities. We select BTC, we find company willing to host trainees, we sign an agreement, and we train both the BTC trainers and the company technical staff together. Trainees spend 60% of their time in the company and 40% in the classroom. It sounds uncomplicated, but finding this company, that is the hard part. The hardest part is convincing private sector company to participate. The first question is always, what do we get from this? There are no government rules, no incentives, no legal obligation. And after years of many donors working here without coordination, everyone expects to be paid, but I have seen what works. Years ago, Scania, in cooperation with the Swedish NGOs, built their own training academy in Erbil. Mechanics, builders, at work because they need people to maintain their products. They listen when the private sector has a real reason to invest in scale at work. That is the model we are trying to build, with a real business value, not just goodwill. One last thing, after all donor funding that has come through Kurdistan, something has shifted. I once received a call from a woman who wanted to join a training. I asked what she was interested in. She said, it doesn't matter how much do you pay for transport. That is what we are dealing with. People come for the allowance, not the learning. The real question is not which certificate we give people, it is whether they can find work and earn income later. That is what we have to focus on. Everything else is secondary. Thank you for your listening. I hope this gives a concrete picture of what dual VET looks like when we try to implement it in fragile context. It is difficult, but it is possible and it is worth doing. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this was my colleague Ismail, and I think it's he points out very concrete challenges that he is facing. I just want to switch to another model that could be possible, and now I'm speaking about Senegal and another two GIZ projects. It's a REFOP, it's a dual VET, it's a classical dual VET reform project that GIZ is implementing since years in Senegal, and we as GFA have a component within, and there is the new project Réseau, where Tobias will share his experience in the breakout session. And the interesting part, Réseau is a cross-border project between Senegal, Mali, and Guinea with a component on employment promotion. And so the interesting part in this area is that they both, the REFOP, the dual VET project, and Réseau are sharing the same project site. It's Kédougou. It's in the very eastern part of Senegal, in the border region with Mali and Guinea. And these are just some ideas, but I think that's something that we often see in countries, because we do have countries that are fragile in some areas, and in other areas they are not fragile at all. So for example, in the capital or in a complete different zone, there's ability and we can implement traditional classical VET projects, and then we have areas, often the border areas, that are more fragile. So I just wanted to give some ideas how possibly this bridge between these two programs could look like. No? So for example, there could be trainers for the TVET centers that the REFOP project is working with. They can be used to deliver short-term trainings within the Réseau program. Or there could even be a recognition bridge, no? That the short-term programs that Réseau is offering offer an opportunity, a pathway into the more formal dual system of the Senegalese government. Or that the trainers are the same trainers. No? We take the trainers that had been trained under REFOP, for work-based learning, for example, how to better collaborate with the private sectors, and those are the trainers offering the trainers within a cash for work component of the Réseau project. And then also the same with the private sector partners. No? So the FOP has to identify private sector partners that are hosting the apprenticeship, and those could be the same partners that, for example, hosting interns identified via the RESO program. So I think there are these opportunities where this bridge can be built between a more, I would say, classical dual VET program and a program that is more designed for being implemented in a fragile zone. And then maybe last, because I think when we talk about dual VET, we always talk about the difficulties to get private sector involved. It's everywhere a problem, not only in fragile states, it's even a problem in Germany. So I think that's something that it's part of our work. And I have already spoken about all the difficulties. No, it's a formal contract requires stability. We need commitment from the company. We need quality supervision, and all of that could be difficult when it's fragile. But nevertheless, I think when we maybe include also more informal workplaces in smaller businesses, when we think about internships over weeks or shorter ones, when security allows it, when we have curriculums of short-term courses that are co-designed with the needs of the private sector in the specific area, when we maybe are implementing well-designed cash for work programs that are training in specific skills that are needed in this section where a future income can come in. And when we sort of include the diaspora, we can still work with the private sector, although we are in a fragile context. So just to say, to close my keynote, I would say we don't abandon, we can adapt. It has to be short, it has to be modular, it has to be flexible. We need the local partners for delivery. It's very obvious in Burkina, we wouldn't be able to deliver our trainings without our local partners. We have to be honest expectations. We need to build the bridge. We have to work on existing systems that are there. So now, I can close here and hand over to Amir, who will then speak about the task force for refugees.
Warm welcome and greetings from sunny Copenhagen. The education section of UNHCR sits in Copenhagen. That's why I'm based in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And thank you very much for the camp team, BarCamp team, for organizing this discussion and for including UNHCR in this very important conversation. And of course, thank you, Maren and Ismail, for opening the discussion and bringing the reality of fragile context so clearly into the room. From UNHCR side, I would like to focus on one point. If we want vocational skills development and dual TVET to work for refugees and displaced people, we cannot look only at training delivery. We also need to look at the systems around it, as already mentioned by Maren. For us, the main question is always how can refugees and displaced people be included in existing national, regional, and global TVET systems instead of being placed in a small parallel programs that disappear when a project ends. That's really key concern for all of us working for UNHCR, for refugees, actually inclusion. This is where institutional strengthening becomes very important. It means working with ministries, with TVET authorities, training providers, employers, development partners, and refugee hosting communities so that inclusion is considered from the beginning when programs are designed, financed, and implemented. UNHCR has been working very closely with partners, particularly ILO, GIZ, Finchurch Aid, through what started as an informal TVET steering collaboration and has developed into a kind of TVET task force on refugees. One of the first important joint steps was the study on skills and labor market transitions for refugees and host communities developed through this partnership and published in 2022. It's accessible publicly. So the study helped us move from general advocacy to more practical evidence. What are the barriers refugees face in accessing TVET? What supports transition to work? And what kinds of partnerships make a difference? Building on that, the task force also helped us speak with the stronger and more coordinated voice. This is very important because ILO, GIZ, Finchurch Aid, and other partners are already supporting TVET and skills development programs in many other countries. through our regional and country networks, we try to make sure that refugees inclusion is discussed early when the scope of these programs is still being shaped, not only later when everything has already been decided. For UNHCR, this is a key lesson. Inclusion should not be an add-on. It needs to be built into programs design, eligibility criteria, financing, certification, work-based learning arrangements, and any links with employers, especially when we talk about this dual or work-based learning, actually, vocational education. A good example of this joint effort also was our engagement in African Union Continental Tibet Strategy. Through the task force and wider partnerships, we were able to contribute to discussions around inclusion of refugees, displaced people, and host communities. The new African Continental Tibet Strategy, I guess many of you you know it, this 2025-2034 version now gives more visibility to migrants and refugees. And this is important because it creates a stronger regional policy basis for national level actions. And another important moment was Africa Skills Week 2024, which was the first edition of Africa Skills Week, organized by the African Union Commission's team, supported by many other agencies, including ILO, GIZ, UNIDO, and UNESCO UNIVOC. UNHCR and partners engaged jointly in discussions on skills development, institutional strengthening, and refugee inclusion. Platforms such as SIFA and the Skills Initiative for Africa, I guess also colleagues joining from Africa, they know it very well, have also been useful because they connect policy dialogue, partnerships, and employment-oriented skills development at continental level. More recently, through the effort of the task force, refugee-related discussions have entered wider global Tibet coordination spaces, including the interagency group on Tibet, where agencies such as ILO, UNESCO UNIVOC, the World Bank, UNIDO, and others are engaged. So this matters because refugee inclusion should be part of mainstream Tibet debates, including the future of Tibet and work-based learning, not treated as a separate or isolated humanitarian topic. So we are happy that refugees related issues already included in the working group on global Tibet agenda, future of Tibet, and also work-based learning working group of this interagency Tibet group. At the moment, one of our priorities in the task force is work-based learning in fragile and displacement context. Classroom-based training alone is often not enough because learners need to be in exposure to real work environments, and employers need to be involved, and pathways from training to decent work need to be clearer. But of course, this must be adapted carefully to the context, protection risks, legal frameworks, and labor market realities. And the good thing with work-based learning is always like we see more flexibility, as Maren also mentioned, in informal sector, plus also business associations. They are willing to support refugees inclusion, especially for on-job training and work-based learning, where we have still the issues of right to work for refugees. So we are taking that advantage of the positive side of access to work-based learning for increasing the employability of or the strengthening employability of refugees. Looking ahead, we hope to continue this discussion at the upcoming Africa Skills Week in Zimbabwe in October this year, including through a possible side event on work-based learning in both Tibet and higher education space for refugees and host communities. So to conclude, I would say dual VET or dual Tibet and vocational skills development can be very relevant to refugees, especially in the fragile context, but only if we are realistic. It's not only about copying a model. Ismail already mentioned a couple of very simple things like transportation cost, also lack of access to the companies sometimes around the camps where even we provide the training to the refugees. So it's about adapting it, strengthening institutions, working with employers, and making sure refugees and displaced people are included in national and regional systems from the start. So for UNHCR, partnership is the central to this, and we cannot do this alone. thank you again for giving UNHCR the space to contribute to this discussion, and looking forward to continuing this conversation and also joining the group discussions later. Thank you so much.
I would like then to move to our second part of this BarCamp, which is now your turn, the turn of all the participants. I mean, many of you are returning participants in our BarCamp, so you know that we are not a traditional webinar. It's more also really about your experience that matters, your questions and your perspectives. And therefore, we have prepared five sessions where we can, you together, us and all the participants, discuss real cases with practitioners on the ground that apply inspiring practices. And with this, I would like then to invite our session hosts to come in and explain what they are discussing in their sessions. I would like to start, sorry, that's the wrong one. I would like to start with our colleagues from Lebanon, Swiss contact, Alexandra, who is the Middle East Program Manager. What is your case in Lebanon that you would like to discuss in the breakout session?
Thank you very much. So today, basically, in the breakout session, I'm hoping to walk you through a story as opposed to the standard presentation. And it's about Pioneer, which is really a story of huge needs, unpredictable context, fast-paced adaptation, and a human-centric approach. It's the story of a project that began with one set of assumptions and then, in typical Lebanon style, had to change as the reality on the ground changed multiple times over the last few years. But throughout the process, the purpose remained the same: supporting young people, restoring learning spaces, and responding to crisis in a way that protects dignity. So at the center of the story, there are technical schools, students whose education has been disrupted, displaced families who needed shelter, and partners trying to act responsively in a very complex environment. It's not a linear project cycle by any means. It's just a story of how we moved from crisis response to crisis adapted learning and recovery. And I will share with you in the session the model, how it evolved, what we learned, and why this approach may be relevant for other contexts.
Excellent. A very interesting and inspiring approach, I find. So yeah, that's in room number 1. Alexandra will wait for you to discuss with you on her case in Lebanon. We have then in room number 2, we have Yulia Yepifanova from the Ukraine. She's based in the Ukraine, and speaking about the companies that are still there and willing to train. Yulia, maybe you can tell us what is happening in your session.
Hello, dear friends. Warm greeting from Osama, Ukraine. And shortly about our session. When the full-scale war in 2022 began in Ukraine, many asked how Ukraine would survive. But our project, our team asked a different question: how can we continue to grow? Our project, public-private partnership to improve vocational education in Ukraine, has lived through some of the most challenging times. Phase 2 of our project started during the COVID-19 pandemic and was completed during the full-scale war. And there were a lot of doubts that we can continue something literally under the missile attack. But phase 3 did not simply continue the project. It extended its tenfold, if we talk about the budget, and we tripled the number of strategic partners. From 1 private company donor, now we have 4 private company donors. We increased the number of beneficiary institutions to 29 vocational education all over the Ukraine, also in region, on frontline region. So it will be the story, it will be the discussion not only about the resilience alone, but also how to create new opportunities, building a stronger ecosystem in public-private partnership and growing even the most difficult environments. And if simply like to make a conclusion of all this, we will talk about how to involve business for developing vocational education, even in the most difficult times. So I'm very wait for you for open discussion and brief presentation. Thank you.
Excellent, Julia. Yeah, so the collaboration with the private sector, one of the key topics for us in DualVet. So that's happening in the Ukraine despite the invasion. And super, thanks you for hosting this session in room number 2. Then we have room number 2, our colleagues from Gaza, Reem Jaybat from the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. You have some adaptations, how you do work-based learning in these difficult situations in Gaza. What are you discussing in your session?
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. In our session, we will highlight our experience basically in TVET Gaza as a real story of resilience and continuity, adaptation amid all of this unprecedented crisis that happened in Gaza. And we will take you through our approach, how was our response, what were the challenges that we have addressed, and even the other challenges that we have not addressed, because it's very important that we keep also realistic in terms of what we have been able to do and what we have learned from this crisis, and what we continue to do. And we will definitely, these are through Gaza experience, and I will be together with my colleagues, Gaza TVET principals, who has done an amazing job in terms of responding to this crisis and continuing the practical training and lessons and what we have learned in terms of institutional resilience and the role of skills development, supporting the recovery and long-term stability. So this what will be our focus in our session. We will open also the discussion to hear from you and share our experience and have any questions from our side.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Reem. So whoever wants to discuss about Gaza and with Reem, that will be in room number 3. We have then also our colleagues from GIZ here. They will stay in the plenary, the colleagues from Senegal and Ethiopia, Tobias Ebert and Loris Kempien. Maybe the two of you, or one, I don't know, want to explain us what you are discussing in your session.
We often think of companies, apprenticeships, and direct pathways into employment. But what happens when we work in contexts where the main challenge is not only skills, but fragile local economies, weak services, displacement, or insecurity? In this session, we will look at 2 different contexts: post-conflict recovery in Tigray and border areas of Senegal, Mali, and Guinea, where stability is closely linked to socio-economic resilience. One of the questions we want to explore is how can dual TVET principles be adapted when training is only one piece of a much broader puzzle. We'll discuss how vocational training, MSME support, employer engagement, basic economic and social services, and local cooperation can be connected to create real livelihood opportunities. The session is really not about presenting a finished model. It's rather about exchanging experiences on what works, what does not work, and how dual TVET can contribute to resilience, employment, and social cohesion in fragile contexts. Looking forward to all your participation.
Thank you so much, Loris. So whoever wants to discuss about Ethiopia and Senegal and their approach, you can stay just where you are in the plenary and discuss there. Thanks also, Loris, for mentioning this. We are not looking into one model. I think that's for all the 5 sessions that we are having today. It's not that creating the best. It's more to think about what works and what needs to be adapted. And that's then also, I think, the flow of the discussion that we should handle in this breakout sessions. We have still also our colleagues, as mentioned earlier, Marin and Amir, about really how realistically we can think of the delivery of DualVet in the fragile context. These 2, Marin and Amir, will wait for you in room number 4 to discuss the reality checks of DualVet. So this is what we are offering today. Room number 1, Lebanon. Room number 2, Ukraine. Room number 3, Gaza. Room number 4, Marin and Amir. And whoever wants to talk with Tobias and Loris on Ethiopia and Senegal, please stay in the plenary. Just 1 minute before we actually start and open, I will briefly explain, but I guess after so many years of online. You probably know all how to get there, but how to technically get now in the breakout rooms. You see on the top bar the icon on rooms. Please click on rooms. Once you click on rooms, you see on the sidebar the 4 options that we have. Room number 1, Lebanon. Room number 2, Ukraine. Room number 3, Gaza. And room number 4 is dual-vet reality. And the plenary is then with Senegal and Ethiopia. With this, I would say we start our discussions. I wish you very fruitful discussion, respectful discussions. Consider that all these fragile contexts are all different. There's no one-fit-all approach, but let's hear how we can share the experience and find good solutions for our own cases. With this, I will let you all go into your sessions. I hope that Salvatore has opened the rooms, and I see you then all back at Swiss time 12:30. So we have 40 minutes of discussions in the breakout sessions.
The breakout sessions are closed now. So hello, everybody. I'm Ingrid. I take over for the closing and the reporting back. I hope, and I'm quite sure you had also some very heartwarming and impressive discussions and hope some learnings as well. We will wrap up now and hear from the different groups what happened, what was discussed. I am sure you had a very difficult time choosing the sessions because all of them, they're very, very interesting and inspiring. As it was mentioned before, you will get the documentation. We took some notes and also share the presentations. And with this, I want to invite now the host of the different sessions to report back, let's say, the most important discussions and findings in 2 minutes. So give us some highlights on what you have discussed. And with this, let's start with the plenary session. We had the session on Ethiopia and Senegal here. So is it Tobias and colleagues? Do you want to report back? What did you discuss?
Yes, Loris and me actually exactly, and I think Loris will briefly come in.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, thank you, Ingrid. No worries. Yeah, I think for me what became the most obvious is really that training is often considered, especially in these fragile contexts, are they post-conflict or cross-border, it's like very different types of fragility, but that basically the essence for especially for the beneficiaries but also the partners is employment, and that basically TVET or vocational training should always be designed that it leads to employment. It may seem a very like simple observation, but I think it's important because yeah, there's always also a lot of investment into the training part, but I think it's especially important in these contexts to understand what or how a training can really lead also to a sustainable employment, and there the context really matters. Because especially in fragile areas, it's really important to understand what the market has to offer. It's usually also that a strong preference for self-employment because, yeah, there's very little offer from private sector to host a big amount of wage employment. So, yeah, basically, I would say this was the main takeaway, and that programs should be designed in looking into how can we reach this goal. And there, of course, training is the common sense, but that training is also begleitet. Yeah, I don't know, accompanied by other measures that lead to sustainable employment promotion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So one of the main messages and takeaways is really to link training to the markets, understand the markets in order to find ways for sustainable employment. Thank you so much, Loris, Tobias, and thanks, Eva, for supporting the session. Let's see what happened in room number 1, Lebanon. Alexandra, do you want to report back, please?
Yes, hello. So I think there's 2 main points which were particularly interesting. All the points were interesting, but 2 main points that stood out because also they're relevant to a lot of the things that are included in the other sessions as well. So on the private sector engagement side, I think one of the most interesting thing was everyone faces difficulty engaging the private sector. And for Lebanon, it's already in an economic freefall because of the economic collapse that started in 2019. And many companies are suffering. So there's a lot of reluctance to even be contributing in any way to projects. Our tactical approach and strategy was to start small and not overwhelm them with requests, not overwhelm them with a full project scale, but to approach them at a small scale level to hook them first before we move forward with our project. And that included anything from can you give us 2 buckets of paint to do you mind sending one of your technicians to give us to give the students a session, a 2-hour session, just with your expertise on waterproofing or painting or whatever it is. So even in kind, without material, more time investment as well. And then using social spaces to highlight this contribution and give it enough importance for 2 things: to validate the importance of their contribution to the project and the impact it did, and to create competition with other private sector actors who are in competition with these private actors, to also get them next time to be more involved in our project. And on the level of education to market readiness, one critical thing for us was actually creating this linkage where we are using our consultations with the private sector actors on what the gaps are in readiness of students when they graduate with technical capacities. What are the gaps? What are the problems they are finding with technicians? And how we can use our project to already address these gaps before they are graduated from the technical or vocational schools, so that they're already geared to think of gaps that are already found in the market and they are prepared for it. And then creating linkages with different business centers who can allow access to market opportunities, whether it be internships, short-term employment, long-term employment, seasonal employment even. So making sure that this cycle and this link is available to them. So I think these were the main 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander, for this energetic summary as well, and for keeping the time. So the one is the market readiness, and the second, or what you mentioned first, is also the engagement with the companies and start at a small scale, and maybe not with the full-fledged let's say request that everything that we want from them. And I think this leads very well to room number 2, Ukraine. Before, I want to thank Linda also for the support. In Ukraine, I think, Julia, you discussed something similar, correct? Please
yes.
Summarize for us.
Of course. I can divide our discussion in 2 parts. The first part, it was mostly about the specific of the project implementation, sharing the experience, and in general, they described the system of vocational education in Ukraine in general, according to the new legislation. And the second part we discuss is specific about the businesses, how we can involve business in educational sphere, what the issues, what the strong side, can we use the model for involving. What is the difference of involving business or partnership with business during the war or others crisis, or during the peace calm time? I'm really grateful for our small group and for participants for their open question, for their interest. So it was really a live discussion. I think the common conclusion that the business is a very important part of the educational process, and we should find the key for the business, how to make the cooperation between the educational sphere and the business community sustainable, not for one time, but for the long period. For the and what very much important for the to guarantee the benefits for the both side, not only for school or for businesses, to show them that it's real possible to create the model where the both side will be satisfied of such cooperation. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the summary, and you showed us, and I was part of this session, so thanks a lot. You showed us a very nice, iconic picture that you took also during a blackout. People, masters from the companies, upskilling the teachers, and really working together. And I think this is what you also mentioned in your summary: this cooperation on a long run with a long term perspective, and how to create it with a lot of dialogue and coming together and working together. Thank you so much, Julia. And then let's move on to room number 3, Gaza. Reem, what happened in your session? And thanks, Christine, for supporting.
Yeah, thank you. There has been an excellent discussion. I would really like the excellent and engaging comments that we have received and the questions. In our session, we actually have discussed the Gaza experience and how the innovation and the determination has made it possible for us to sustain learning and preserve skills pathway and create opportunities even in the most challenging circumstances. The most important thing that stood out from the discussion and the agreement within the group, TVET is an investment. It's an investment in resilience, livelihood, and long-term recovery, equipping young people with the skills and dignity and hope to rebuild their futures. We have discussed in our session whether we have been prepared in UNRWA Gaza for this crisis and what have actually motivated the students to come when there are no hope around them. And the most thing that I would like really to, we have discussed all the lessons learned, the things, our experience, what innovations we have done to make the learning continue amid all of these challenges. But the most important thing was really the flexibility and adapting our approach as we go, because nothing has been expected, even what kind of safe pathways, where to move, moving the students, whether we can move them, what kind of communication that would be possible, how they can provide the materials, and using the very raw material from the destructions around them to make something. So what really makes us survive during this crisis was the determination of our staff, the will to live, and the belief that this is the only hope for them to survive. Our students really wanted to continue their training and to do whatever is possible in this. And this has motivated them and motivate us as well in terms of working together. And this has not been possible for us in UNRWA to make it alone, because we have been supported by different departments within UNRWA, as also with our partners in Gaza, to be able to navigate all of these challenges, because we have to be very quick, very flexible, move and adapt and respond to this crisis. So no one can make it alone. We have to continue working together and support each other to navigate the crisis, because we cannot change the crisis and the challenges that we face as that we see them, but we can navigate around them and work together And this what was actually the last comment in terms of the importance of partnerships and working together so we can build on our expertise and share. And this is exactly the objective of this webinar, where we are sharing our practices. Thank you. Over from my side.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rim. So we had many very important terms here. No one can make it alone. Flexibility, adaptability, determination, hope, be quick, join partnerships, and this helps. And a lot of motivation to continue. Thank you so much. Now from Gaza, let's close the circle again. And let's see what happened in room number 4.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ingrid. It's me reporting
you take
back.
Over.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And also thanks to the group, because we had really very interactive group discussion. In our breakout room, the main message was that in fragile and displacement context, vocational skills development. Yeah, I mean, the message was that the fragile and displacement context, the vocational skills development cannot be understood only as training. It has to be connected to livelihoods, protection, psychological support, social cohesion, and transition to work. We heard first about an experience in Cameroon, working with internally displaced people and local host communities, because people are moving from one region to another, and the project had to start with identifying the target groups and understanding their real skills and livelihood needs. One important point was the focus on income generating training, especially training that can quickly support livelihoods. And a very important element was that the project included both displaced people and vulnerable host communities. This was important, and it is very important to avoid the tension between groups and to support social cohesion. The project was also coordinated closely with the government and local authorities. For us, the strongest points also from the example was the attention to people with special needs, from that case of Cameroon, and disabilities. That also reminds us inclusion of psychological and special support for learners and trainees. In this context, many learners have experienced trauma, and they cannot fully benefit from training if it is if this kind of support is missing. So we also heard about experiences from Mali and Senegal, where the approach had to be very flexible in border areas and communities affected by displacement. The skill training linked to cash for work and rehabilitation of existing centers or community infrastructure. This is very specific also feature of training in fragile context, because the training is not only about future employment or skills for future, but also about immediate recovery, community rebuilding, and a strengthening dialogue between local communities, especially the communities at the border between 3 countries or 2 countries. So another interesting discussion was also about the families on move. We got a very interesting question from GIZ colleague. The question was about whether displaced families, especially extended family networks, can also become informal learning space. So this is something we saw as an interesting idea, but also one of the area needs careful reflection, because it was mentioned that because we have also protection risk, safeguarding issues, and questions around quality of learning. But anyway, that was very interesting question. And another topic also was discussed about certification, can be very important. Where it helps refugees and displaced people, and sometimes also in some contexts, maybe certification itself is not really important. So, and the last point was what was shared by Don Bosco colleague, which was very interesting on the additional services with the training, especially for job placement services, internship, workplace learning, included in the training package. So flexible and also very inclusive training packages. So that's also the last point we discussed in our group. Thank you so much. And if I miss anything, I apologize, because I'm not really good note taker, but it was my task to do it. So back to you. Ingrid.
Thank you very much. Wow, very impressive. So many things that you discussed, and I think you are very good note taker, because there were so many aspects that you have mentioned, like the income generating trainings, joining, let's say, groups, inclusion, also think about the special needs infrastructure, families. So we are really looking forward to see the notes and the documentation of your session as well. Thank you so much to all of you for the reporting back and the discipline in keeping the time in the reporting back. And as you can all see, where there were very, very diverse and different discussions, and at the same time, many things that we already heard in the keynote at the beginning, like adaptation, be flexible, and bring joint forces. I mean, so many things were mentioned as well in the different country contexts. With this, the system is already reminding me that we have only a few minutes left. I want to thank all of you, our speakers, our hosts, and all the supporters here. And I think the team, and especially Christina, who had put a lot of work in the preparation of this BarCamp, deserve a virtual applause, a big applause, and thank you so much for that. And it was extremely inspiring. And just one last, let's say, last word or last slide on the next step. So if you want to dive deeper and you need the DCD world for further discussions, or you want to get connected, please let us know and contact us. Here in the documentation and in the chat box, you will find how to, or you get the information how to find us via our email, our LinkedIn channel, or our website. You will receive the recording of the keynote and the materials, especially the presentations and the documentation of the breakout sessions soon. And please stay tuned for the next edition in our 10 years webinar series. On the 14th of October, we will talk about social dialogue and what this has to do and what is the linkage with dual VT. And I think some of the aspects that you mentioned, we will hear again. So thank you so much.